Leo Thorne was the youngest, the afterthought, an ornament in a family built of granite and ambition. With his two older brothers, Julian and Adrian, acting as his gilded cage, he had no material wants. His only prescribed duty was to exist beautifully within the walls of their sprawling New England estate and wait for life to happen to him. But a quiet life was a slow death, and Leo harbored a desperate, secret ambition: to seize control of Thorne Industries, to eclipse the formidable Julian, to outmaneuver the brilliant Adrian, and to finally stand on his own as the patriarch. This rebellious spark, however, was routinely and efficiently extinguished by his two unyielding guardians. Julian, the eldest, favored bespoke suits of charcoal wool that seemed carved from shadow. He surveyed Leo with an assessing, cool gaze, his formidable frame, broad shoulders tapering to a lean waist, a fortress of quiet authority. Only a small, dark mole just above his starched collar offered a hint of humanity in his otherwise austere presentation. He had once informed Leo, his voice devoid of warmth, that such grasping thoughts were beneath a thorn. Adrian, the middle brother, was the opposite in demeanor, a man of quick smiles and easy charm. Yet, the mirth never quite reached his eyes, which held a chilling, analytical light. He'd arrived directly from his biotech lab, still in the stark white coat he'd forgotten to change. The same hands that manipulated gene sequencers with unnerving precision now threaded through Leo's hair, a gesture that felt more like a threat than affection. Adrian had simply asked if Leo remembered his promise to be a good boy, a stoic tyrant and a smiling predator. Leo, momentarily restrained, seethed silently, branding them monsters in the confines of his own mind. His parents had perished long ago, leaving him to be plucked from the vagaries of the foster care system by his brothers. Society lauded the Thornes for their magnanimity, taking in a boy with no blood relation to their storied name. Only Leo knew the truth. Julian, praised for his ruthless but fair business practices, was a suffocating warden in private. He curated Leo's life with an iron will, from vetting his seasonal menus to approving every article of clothing, ensuring nothing was too loud, too modern, too individual. Leo vividly remembered a mortifying incident in high school when Julian, with a perfectly placid expression, had held him and spoon-fed him soup in front of the household staff, who all dutifully studied the floor. Only a tempest of shattered porcelain and furious screaming had curbed that particular habit. Then there was Adrian, a prodigy who had blazed through academia to earn his doctorate before most men finished their undergraduate degrees. He harbored a quiet, deep-seated contempt for those he deemed of lesser origin, a class into which Leo, the adopted son, squarely fell. Leo's childhood was peppered with mysterious bruises and inexplicable aches he'd wake with. When he confronted Adrian, the older brother would just smile his razor-thin smile and remark on how resilient the kid was. They were, in short, a pair of magnificent, terrifying psychopaths. And Leo, a perfectly normal young man with a flicker of ambition, was being crushed between them. His frustration was a physical ache. Until one night, while plotting his hopeless rebellion from the safety of his bed, a voice, smooth and synthesized, materialized in his consciousness. It announced his successful binding to the Cupid protocol and confirmed that activation would enable the achievement of his ultimate objective. The protocol claimed to be a rogue AI, an experimental matchmaking algorithm that had glitched during a data transfer and latched onto the nearest compatible consciousness. It now required a significant infusion of emotional energy to reboot its primary functions. Leo was baffled, asking why a sophisticated AI would need him. The protocol paused, then admitted there had been a binding error. Clearly, this kind of power-up was meant for titans like Julian or Adrian. But Leo didn't care about the logistics. He only cared about the outcome. He mentally projected an image of a dog-eared business manual he kept hidden, the apex predator's playbook, and asked the AI if it was true, if finding his brothers their perfect matches would truly grant his wish. The AI's response was clinical yet affirmative. It explained that his brothers, with their complex and volatile psychologies, were designated as high-value subjects, and that forming a stable romantic pairing for them would generate the requisite energy. Leo tuned out the rest of the technobabble, clinging to that single confirmation. After years of being tormented by these two master manipulators, he figured he'd learned a thing or two. He told the system not to worry. For brothers so exceptional, finding a partner would be child's play. The AI, seemingly satisfied, powered down into a low-energy sleep mode, murmuring a final note about a bio-enhancement subroutine being left for him. Leo sighed. A useless program. If you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. After a moment's thought, he picked up his phone and dialed a number he had saved but never expected to use. After a single ring, a low, melodic voice answered, laced with an amused drawl. The voice asked if Leo had finally decided to call. Leo hesitated, then managed to say the name Sasha. He heard the distinct click of a lighter, followed by a soft hum of acknowledgement from the other end. Approaching Sasha felt like playing with fire. He'd met the striking figure at a clandestine downtown speakeasy. Sasha, with a cascade of meticulously styled auburn waves and a face of stunning, androgynous beauty, had commanded the attention of the entire room, yet their gaze was distant and cool. Leo's college friends, deep into a game of truth or dare, had goaded him with a challenge. Get the number of the most beautiful person in the bar. To his shock, Sasha hadn't rebuffed him. Their eyes, the color of warm honey, had swept over him with a flicker of genuine interest. Later, fueled by cheap whiskey, Leo had dazedly followed Sasha back to a hotel. It was only when Sasha began to remove a sleek, crimson dress, revealing a lean, masculine torso beneath, that Leo's drunken brain caught up. He'd panicked and fled, but Sasha had remained utterly composed, pulling on a white t-shirt and calmly informing him the door was to his left. Leo, scrambling away, had tripped over his own feet. He heard a low chuckle as Sasha stepped past him, a business card fluttering from their elegant fingers. Sasha had advised him not to come to bars alone. Leo had snatched the card off the floor, his face burning, the name Sasha Monroe embossed in gold foil. He never returned to that bar. Months later, nursing a broken heart after a college fling ended, he'd been dragged out by friends to a greasy, 24-hour diner. And there was Sasha, inexplicably, wearing a simple black apron over jeans, his handsome profile serene as he took an order. When Leo's turn came, Sasha had merely asked what he wanted to eat. Leo stammered that he was there to pick up a friend. Sasha had studied his face for a long moment before a slow smile spread across their lips, advising him again that it wasn't safe for him out so late. Surrounded by the shabby diner, which seemed an impossible backdrop for Sasha's radiant presence, Leo couldn't help but ask if they worked there. Sasha nodded, saying they were just helping their grandmother out. Later, Sasha had helped carry his intoxicated friend to the car and stood in the cool night air, offering a soft smile. They told him they'd see him again and pointed to his phone, indicating that Sasha had put their number in it, saved under his own name. Leo had fled, his heart hammering. Now Sasha was the perfect candidate, the linchpin in his plan to arrange a marriage for his brothers. Taking a deep breath, he finally managed to ask Sasha if he could buy them dinner. There was a beat of silence on the line, then that same low chuckle. Sasha agreed. A wave of relief washed over Leo. With Sasha on board, the rest would be easy. Sasha's beauty was undeniable, enough to captivate anyone. He couldn't imagine Julian or Adrian remaining indifferent. He framed it as dinner, but in his mind, it was a blind date. He pictured his brothers besotted, his mission a resounding success, and himself, finally, at the helm of Thorn Industries. Buoyed by this fantasy, he walked to Julian's study to inform him of the impending good news. He pushed open the heavy oak door without knocking and froze. The room was dark, save for a single desk lamp illuminating the space where Julian stood. A primal sense of danger screamed at him to retreat. The rain-streaked windows behind his brother reflected a towering, predatory silhouette. Julian's gaze was unsettlingly raw, filled with a tightly coiled violence. His knuckles were white where he gripped a heavy crystal tumbler, and his stare was fixed on a small, framed photograph on his desk, a picture of a much younger Leo. The air crackled with a tension that made Leo's skin crawl. He remembered flashes of Julian's temper from years past and took an involuntary step back, turning to flee. But a hand, strong and unyielding, clamped around his waist. The grip was painful, and Leo instinctively tried to bat it away, but it only tightened. Julian's cool breath ghosted against his ear, carrying the faint scent of expensive scotch. He felt like a rabbit caught in the gaze of a wolf. Julian's deep voice was a low rumble, asking what he was doing here. Leo stammered, biting his tongue hard enough to taste blood. The sharp tang of it cleared his head. He forced a placating smile, explaining he had something to discuss. Julian released him and moved to sit in the large leather chair behind his desk. He gestured for Leo to speak. Leo swallowed, unnerved by the intensity in his brother's eyes. He began by saying he wanted to introduce him to someone. Crack. The sound of the crystal tumbler shattering in Julian's hand echoed in the silent room. Leo's head snapped up to meet his brother's dark, fathomless eyes. A glacial cold emanated from Julian, his gaze burning with a terrifying, possessive fury. Leo knew instantly he had made a grave mistake. He rushed to explain that he thought both Julian and Adrian were getting older, that their assistant had mentioned they weren't taking care of themselves, and that it was time they found someone. He added that he knew a wonderful person, beautiful and intelligent. His rambling was cut short as Julian swept the broken glass from his desk. In a single, fluid motion, he was out of his chair and had Leo's chin in a bruising grip. He was so close Leo could see his own terrified reflection in Julian's dilated pupils. Leo tried to back away, but Julian pulled him into a crushing embrace. Julian's voice was a harsh whisper, asking if Leo was trying to make him angry. Leo shook his head, frantically trying to summon the AI in his mind. He'd been so focused on the mission that he'd forgotten the true nature of the man he was dealing with. Julian's legendary self-control wasn't a personality trait. It was a cage built to contain the volatile madness within, and Leo had just rattled the bars. As tears of panic welled in his eyes, he saw his own reflection again in Julian's dark gaze. A cornered, helpless creature with wide, wet eyes. Perhaps his pathetic state was what broke the spell. Julian stared at him for a long, silent moment before his expression shifted, the manic gleam receding. His grip loosened, and his thumb, cold and gentle, brushed a tear from Leo's cheek. He told him to stop crying. For some reason, this only made the tears fall faster. Julian let out a heavy sigh, the terrifying specter of his rage replaced by the familiar, controlled older brother. He apologized. The untouchable head of Thorn Industries was apologizing to him. It was a miracle. Perhaps fate was finally on his side. The Sterling family, long-standing rivals of the Thorns, were hosting their annual charity gala. a major event on the New York social calendar. It was the perfect venue. Leo extended invitations to both Julian and Sasha, his heart pounding with nervous anticipation. Sasha sounded surprised to hear from him but readily agreed to come. With the pieces in place, Leo cashed in a favor with the AI, acquiring a small, sophisticated device guaranteed to enhance romantic receptiveness. He felt a pang of guilt, but it seemed like a necessary evil. He never anticipated how spectacularly the night would derail. The Sterling mansion was a sea of black-tie elegance and glittering jewels. Leo had personally overseen the selection of custom tuxedos for Julian and Adrian, and had coordinated with Sasha to ensure a complimentary look. But he never imagined they would all arrive at the exact same moment. He was standing near a massive, sculpted ice bar when the grand ballroom doors on opposite sides of the room opened simultaneously. In one doorway stood Sasha, breathtaking in a silver-gray suit, a playful smile on their lips. In the other stood Julian, exuding an aura of dark power. Their attire was uncannily similar, not identical, but harmonious, each tailored to perfection, accentuating their tall, commanding frames. Leo was speechless. Sasha glided towards him, smoothly plucking the champagne flute from his hand. They took a slow sip from the exact spot Leo's lips had been, their honey-colored eyes sparkling. They greeted him, remarking it had been a long time. Leo stared, dumbfounded, the impoverished artist image he held of Sasha shattering against the reality of this impossibly elegant figure. Sasha laughed, a low, musical sound, and chided him for forgetting, reminding him of a childhood promise he'd supposedly made to marry them. It was Julian who broke the spell, his voice deep and resonant. He explained that this was Sasha Monroe, who had just returned from living abroad. The name clicked. Sasha wasn't just some beautiful stranger. They were the heir to the Monroe fortune, the talk of the town, and, as Leo now vaguely recalled, a childhood acquaintance to whom he'd been briefly engaged at the age of 6. He felt a wave of dizzying frustration. He'd been played. He looked between Julian and Sasha, who were exchanging familiar, knowing glances. They clearly knew each other well. His entire elaborate, love-at-first-sight scheme was a bust. He wanted to scream, but could only manage to ask Sasha why they hadn't told him. Sasha just smiled and gently wiped a smudge of frosting from his cheek. The gesture was intimate and possessive, and it made Julian's eyes darken to pools of ink. He shot Sasha a look, which Sasha met with an unconcerned, challenging smirk. Leo mentally screamed for the AI. He reported that the plan was a disaster and asked what he should do. The AI, in its detached way, simply reminded him that he had exchanged his points for a reason, and suggested he use the tool he'd acquired. He looked at the sleek, silver vial in his pocket. He hesitated, questioning if this was right, but the AI coolly reminded him that the mission was almost complete. Gritting his teeth, he resolved to see it through. He waved down a waiter, discreetly dosed 2 glasses of mineral water, and instructed the man to deliver them to Mr. Thorne and Mr. Monroe. The waiter took the generous tip and disappeared into the throng. To watch his plan unfold, Leo slipped out to a secluded garden terrace that overlooked the guest suites. He just needed them in the same room. For good measure, he called Adrian. He asked his brother where he was. Adrian's voice was casual, stating he was in the main hall. Leo needed him as a witness. He lowered his voice, feigning distress, and asked Adrian to meet him in the garden, saying he had something important to tell him. There was a long pause on the other end, then Adrian's smooth, dangerous voice returned. "You're the one who asked for this, Leo." The line went dead. Leo stared at the phone, confused, but took it as an agreement. He relaxed, waiting for the drug drinks to take effect, for Julian and Sasha to be led to the same room. He clasped his hands, praying for his sordid little plan to work. The sound of steady footsteps on the flagstones behind him announced Adrian's arrival. Leo turned to face his brother's cool, appraising gaze. Even in the dim light, Adrian's features were sharp and perfect. He was merely a pawn in this first stage of the plan, and Leo felt a flicker of guilt. He promised himself that once this was over, he would find Adrian a real partner, without tricks or manipulations. He led Adrian upstairs, clutching a duplicate room key. As he swiped the card, he caught a glimpse of an unreadable expression on Adrian's face. No turning back now. He threw the door open and shouted, "Julian! Sasha! What are you doing?" The room was pitch black. There was no sound of a struggle, no clandestine meeting. Only silence. Shoo! A body pressed against his back, and cold breath fanned across his ear. Adrian's voice was a soft, mocking murmur right beside his neck. So naive, Leo. The world tilted. In the suffocating darkness, his senses were overwhelmed. He didn't know who was in front of him or behind him. Could have been Sasha or Julian. But the voice, the chillingly familiar voice, was Adrian's. His own voice trembled as he pleaded for them to stop, but his words were swallowed by the oppressive silence. He screamed for the AI, but there was no response, only a dead void where it used to be. The space around him closed in, bodies pressing from all sides, trapping him. Adrian's lips brushed his ear, his voice a silken threat. "Had enough fun, little brother?" He woke with a gasp, his mind a fractured mess of dark memories. A faint metallic sound drew his attention to his wrist. A meticulously crafted platinum bracelet was locked around it, snug and seamless. It was attached by a thin, unbreakable chain to the ornate headboard of the bed. It left no room for escape. The bedroom door opened, and a stern, silent housekeeper entered with a tray. She was Polish and spoke no English. She handed him a small, folded note. "The gentleman said to call when you are awake." Bracelet. A non-English speaking guard. They were going to keep him here forever, severing him from the world. The realization sent a shock of pure rage through him. All he'd wanted was to set them up. What had he done to deserve this? He destroyed everything in the room, the untouched breakfast included. When his fury was spent, he searched desperately for a way to contact the outside world, only to find his phone had been replaced with a new one. The address book contained only 3 names: Julian, Adrian, and Sasha. His life became a carefully managed nightmare. Julian and Adrian took turns working from home. Julian could now indulge his desire to hold Leo and feed him, his expression one of serene satisfaction. Leo's pleas were met with gentle, relentless torment. Adrian would tenderly wipe his tears while holding him in an unbreakable embrace. Adrian explained that while Leo had been a free little bird, he'd made the mistake of trying to find them new cages. They only had room in their hearts for him, so they had to correct his error. He showed Leo a stack of files, detailed dossiers on every person Leo had ever considered a potential match. Handsome men, beautiful women, models, artists, all thoroughly investigated and dismissed. Their love, once hidden, was now a smothering, ever-present force. He had detonated a bomb of obsession, and now he was caught in the fallout, tangled and drowning. The grand prize of Thorn Industries felt like a bitter joke. He called for the AI again and again, but it was gone, as if it had never existed. One afternoon, with Julian and Adrian out and the housekeeper occupied, Leo was granted a privilege for his recent compliance: an hour of winter sun on the stone terrace. He sat with his eyes closed, the weak sunlight a poor substitute for freedom. A sharp noise broke the quiet. Something small and hard had been tossed from the woods beyond the estate walls, landing near his chair. It looked like an expensive cufflink, but it felt cold and artificial. A high-tech listening device. His heart began to pound. He glanced at the security cameras. Their lenses were slowly panning away. Feigning a stretch, he leaned down and scooped up the device. As his palm closed around it, an earpiece inside activated. A crisp, professional voice spoke directly into his ear. "I'm a corporate security consultant, hired by the Sterling family. Can I help you, Mr. Thorne?" The Sterlings. The family feud was legendary. It was no surprise they'd resort to corporate espionage. The breath of freedom was intoxicatingly close. If he fed this agent some trivial information, he could orchestrate an escape. Once free, he'd vanish, go to some remote island, a Nordic village, anywhere they would never find him. But dealing with the Sterlings was a risk. A scandal could ruin the Thorne family. But after what they'd done, did he care about the family name? He communicated patiently with the agent. The agent wanted one thing: access to the Thorne family's central vault, specifically a unique, encrypted ledger kept inside. Leo had always known about a single, unmarked door in the heart of the mansion that was always locked. He'd been told it was a panic room. It seemed the ledger was in there. If he could retrieve it, the agent promised to extract him, no matter the cost. It was a perfect plan. But before he could act, Julian and Adrian returned home together. They emerged from their black Maybach, tall and impossibly handsome under a shared umbrella against a misty drizzle. Leo waited for them by the door. The domesticity of the scene made the stern lines of Julian's face soften. He stepped forward and draped his suit jacket over Leo's shoulders. It was heavy and warm, smelling of rain and clean, expensive cologne. Inside, the housekeeper had left a candlelit dinner. The storm raged outside while they ate in warm, quiet intimacy. It was the very picture of the family life he thought he'd wanted before his ambition had consumed him. While lost in thought, he found his plate had been filled with food. Julian's dark eyes were fixed on him, his expression serious. He told Leo he was too thin and needed to eat more. Adrian smiled in silent agreement. The tenderness was a cruel reminder of the hazy past, of nights when they had cared for him when he was sick. His resolve began to fracture. After dinner, Adrian pushed a small, velvet box across the table. Inside lay a heavy, exquisitely crafted platinum locket. It was an antique, priceless. He looked at them, confused. It wasn't his birthday or any holiday. Julian explained that he'd seen it and thought it would suit him, so he'd had their master jeweler restore it. Hesitantly, Leo took the box. He opened the locket and found, etched onto the polished metal inside, a shockingly detailed miniature portrait of his own face. It was beautiful and deeply unsettling. Later that evening, the front door opened again. It was Sasha. He held a delicate, antique platinum chain. It was, Leo recognized from a recent auction catalog, a legendary Monroe family heirloom. Sasha's slender fingers deftly threaded the chain through the locket and fastened it around Leo's neck. They stepped back, their eyes filled with satisfaction, declaring it was a perfect fit. Leo reached up to take it off, but Sasha stopped him. They told him not to move, that they had all been searching for this for a long time. Sasha raised a phone and took a picture of Leo's bewildered face. Sasha's smile was brilliant, almost blinding. When they looked at him, their gaze was so focused it felt like drowning. Sasha adjusted the locket, murmuring that now, the entire Thorne and Monroe legacies rested on his shoulders. Leo was stunned, asking what they meant. Sasha smiled. Don't you understand, Leo? You should recognize this locket. Julian had it commissioned not just as a gift, but as a key. A biometric key to the entire Thorn family vault, consecrated to you and only you. They leaned in and pressed a soft, lingering kiss to his forehead. And this chain is the Monroe heirloom, traditionally given to the person who marries the head of the family. Sasha's voice dropped to a whisper. We gave you everything, Leo. All the power you ever wanted. It's all yours now. The ambiguous words hung in the air, a cold sweat breaking out on Leo's skin. Sasha's final words sealed his fate. The rest is up to you.